Welcome back. The pandemic and your personal finances as the world looks for a return to normalcy. Many Gen Zers are focused on their financial futures. A recent survey from Upwork finds 44% of millennials and 36% of Gen Z turned to freelance and online work last year. How are young job seekers prepared for the workplace post-pandemic? Joining us right now is Z Economy author Jason Dorsey. Jason, great to have you. Thanks very much for joining us. The last time you were on, I was talking about our interview so much because you made so many great points. Tell us now how young people are looking at the future. Have they changed their approach or their priorities post-pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back on. Gen Z in particular is not prepared for what's happening. You know, they entered the workforce later than any previous generation, which is often not talked about. They even got their driver's license later than any previous generation. They crashed into what we saw most likely to lose their job, most likely reduction in hours, most likely reduction in pay, and they have the least established professional networks. For many of them, this has been a crushing experience in terms of their entry into the workforce. What's interesting, as you said, is they are leaning on these gig economy jobs and remote work in general, which we think could really help them not only get through this, but figure out what they like, what they actually want to do. I think what people aren't talking about enough is that those who graduated college last year and will be this year, they're actually supposed to be at the best time to enter their career. It's the #1 best time to launch your career, and it didn't happen for so many of them. We think it's going to be 3 to 5 years of headwinds ahead, trying to find their footing. And what's also not talked about is when the economy does come back, they're now competing with every other generation that has more experience, more relationships, and often, you know, they're competing in this playing field where they don't even necessarily know where to start. So this is a really tough time to be a young adult entering the workforce. The good news is they're learning fast. We're certainly seeing that in our research, and they're figuring out how to look for jobs online. Again, the problem is they have the least experience, and that shows up all the time, and it's something the generation's really going to have to confront.
God. Oh, boy. Well, let me ask you this, because all of a sudden we see a different approach, right? Because right now you're looking at young people having had to deal with schools closing and the rest. But, you know, things happen in cycles. For a long time, we were looking at people coming out of school and wanting to go work for McKinsey or General Electric or Procter & Gamble. They would get these jobs at big, large, multinational corporations. Are you saying this younger generation, and describe who they are, when were they born, what are their ages right now of the Gen Z, what will they be doing? Are you saying that they're going to go more the entrepreneurial route? They're going to try to do these gig jobs?
Yeah, so Gen Z in the United States, the oldest are about 24, 25 years old. The key is, as you know, they don't remember 9/11. That helps us to identify where they started. The youngest in the generation, you could go really young. What's interesting is the generation after Gen Z we've now identified. They're 2, 3, 4 years old. Their experience during this pandemic is fundamentally different than those who are even 7, 8, 9 years old, just because of their age and ability to process what's going on. What we predict is going to happen is the oldest members of this generation, those particularly 17 to 24 or 25, could end up splitting away from those who are younger. Because, as you said, they've crashed into this rough economy. They weren't prepared for it. Maybe they had to do distance learning. Maybe employers say, well, you know, you finished your last year of college remote. Is that actually the same level of work and effort as somebody who went into a class? Did you have the same experience? Did you learn what you needed? That's something we're actually hearing. We saw this with the millennials. The oldest millennials crashed into the Great Recession. They really struggled for 3 to 5 years. All the problems went with that. But the younger part of the generation benefited not only from the recovery, and this is what we predict, they also benefited from learning from those slightly older than themselves. Because just 3, 4 years difference gives you the opportunity not only for the economy to come back, but to go, whoa, I definitely do not want to go into retail merchandising. Those jobs are gone. Don't go for that.
Yes. Wow. And you know what? We should point out that a recent survey from Deutsche Bank finds that people aged 25 to 34 plan to spend half of their stimulus checks on investing in the stock market. They're going to be stock investors. So that's interesting that they are thinking about long-term investing if they're considering putting their money into stocks, right?
Yeah, so that was an interesting study. My understanding of that is it's of those who already have brokerage accounts. But what we have seen in our work is not only are millennials, which would be that age group, are they interested in the stock market? They've seen what happened. They've watched everything on Reddit. They want to participate. Bitcoin is exciting. And so they are more active in the stock market. What's interesting, though, is they're not necessarily thinking about it long term. And I think that's where we run into trouble. As if it's only short-term thinking. We need them to think more long-term, think about putting into their retirement accounts, because we know when we survey them, there won't be Social Security. So the trick is when they get these stimulus checks, for example, if they do, are they going to invest them? Are they going to spend them? What are they going to do with that? And that's what we're studying right now. But it's super interesting to see so many young adults saying, I want to take that money and put it into stocks. And we think a higher percentage will this time, partly because they're in a better position, but partly because they've seen this run up and they think they can jump in right now.
Yeah, I see. Jason, it's great to get your insights. Thank you so much. Jason Dorsey joining us. We'll see you soon, and we'll be right back.
Thanks.